Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back to the Networking RX podcast. I am your host, Frank Agan. I'm the founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. I don't know how old anybody is on this listening to this podcast, but I will tell you this, and if you're old enough, you remember. If not, it's a little bit of education. But prior to the events of September 11th, 2001, you could take a loved one to the airport, walk them to their gate, watch them hand over their ticket and get on the plane. And then when they came back or when they arrived, if people arrived, you could wait at the gate for them to get off. After 9/11, when 9/11 happened, if you recall, there was probably 3 or 4 days where there was no air travel at all. It was really kind of eerie. Where I live was near an airport. It was John Glenn International now. It was Port Columbus at the time. But near enough to the airport that you could see the planes coming in and out. And so there were 3 or 4 days, and I remember being at soccer practice. My kids were really young at the time, being at soccer practice with my kids at a particular field that kind of overlooked the airport, and nothing was happening. And it was really kind of strange there was always something in the sky up until that point. At any rate, when 9/11 happened, during that 3-day period, the government put into place what is now Homeland Security, who then put in place TSA. Travel Safety Administration, I believe, is what TSA stands for. And if I'm wrong, somebody will certainly let me know. But we know them as TSA, and we've all become very accustomed to TSA. You go up, you hand over your license, they check that against the ticket that you have, and then you go through a whole process of screening, taking your shoes, your belt, and so on and so forth off. Now, I get it. There's TSA pre, where you can kind of whisk through. That's a little more complicated on the front end, but saves time on the back end, and I'm not going to get into commentary on that. My point in talking about TSA is that 9/11 happened, and they rolled this out, and I cannot envision a point in my life where we come back away from that. There will never be a point in my lifetime, at least, where we're not going through some sort of TSA type screening. And I bring all this up because on the heels of the coronavirus, COVID-19, I have speculated, okay, what's the change? What's going to be the change to how we live? And there will be. What's going to be the ongoing change that we probably never go back from? And I'm not sure exactly what it is. I hope we handshake. I hope we feel comfortable to hug one another. I hope a lot of things come back, but there's going to be some change as a result of it. And I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's going to be some sort of protection put in place. And really, I don't want to sit here and try and speculate, because that's not certainly what I'm good at and not what this program's about. But I think one of the things that we're going to be doing more and more than we ever have before is having virtual meetings. I think what COVID-19 has done for us is really opened our eyes, and this has probably been one of the positive things about COVID-19, of what all we can do with virtual meetings, what all we can do with the likes of Zoom and Skype, Google Hangouts, WebEx, Microsoft Teams. There's so many things that we can be doing, and I've talked to a lot of people, both inside AmSpirit Business Connections and outside AmSpirit Business Connections, have really had their eyes open and said, wow, there are some things I can do to really make my business go, to be more effective. I've talked to one attorney who's like, you know what, I have so many people that rather than dragging them into my office or me chasing out after them, I can be doing these Zoom meetings, saving me over the course of a year hours and hours of travel time for the clients and for the attorney. And that certainly can be a whole lot more productive. Now, I say that I will be doing more virtual type meetings. I'm plotting and scheming different things that I can do. In fact, during the height of the coronavirus, I literally started my morning involved in a Zoom meeting. I happen to use Zoom, and a lot of people in the organization use Zoom and AmSpirit Business Connections. Not all, but many. But I started the day on a call in a meeting up in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. The call, if I had to have driven it, would have been 2.5 hours away. And then got off of that call, and because of time zones, I was able to get on a call that started at 7 a.m. in Scottsdale, Arizona. It was 10 o'clock our time. They don't change. Anyhow, they're 3 hours behind at that point in the year. Arizona is the only state that doesn't recognize daylight savings time. Neither here nor there. And then finished up that call around 11 o'clock. Had a little downtime, and then got on a lunch call in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm at. And then later in the afternoon, had a call with somebody in Pittsburgh. And then later was over in Massachusetts on a call, a similar type call. In many ways, it made me busier, but I realized that I could certainly do things that I wasn't able to do. Trainings, well, I was able to do them, to be honest, but I never really saw the possibility. So anyhow, virtual meetings will continue. And I stumbled across an article. Actually, the article was shared with me. Dr. Wayne Baker, who is a professor at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. He's somebody I've had on the program. I've talked about. He's the author of a couple books out there. The one that I had him on talking about was All You Have to Do Is Ask. But he also has books that are on networking and social capital, building social capital. He's got a couple different books out there. But at any rate, he's really kind of in the know when it comes to human connection, how we interact. And so he put out an article, and it went out through Psychology Today, which I'm also a subscriber to. I wonder if it'll show up in a print edition, but neither here nor there. But the name of the article is How to Connect Meaningfully in a Virtual Meeting. And the subtitle is 10 Guidelines to Promote Meaningful Connections in a Time of Social Distancing. So what I want to do is I kind of want to go through, I don't want to read the article to you, go out online and look it up, but I kind of want to give some of the high points that he has, and you can take advantage of these to make yourself more effective with respect to meetings, better at making connections in meetings. Because quite honestly, that's what you need. It's not enough just to be on the phone with somebody or be on a Zoom call with somebody, but you've got to be able to connect with them. No different than if you're at a networking function. So the first guideline he has is video on. And you know what? I think I know people are uncomfortable with it, uncomfortable with how they might look. They feel that in times of social distancing, they don't have to, dress the same. Everything's lax, and that's fine if that's how you want to be. But I find that I just connect better with people when I can see them, and I'm always a little more comfortable. I'm a little uncomfortable when somebody is not showing themselves. So first thing, video on. His second guideline is active facilitation. Somebody needs to be facilitating, and I think this is true really of any meeting. I'm fond of saying that if everyone's leading, no one's leading. Sometimes people will say, well, I'll have a meeting, everyone can kind of be in charge. We don't really need a leader. Well, then you don't have a leader. So there's got to be somebody who is providing some sort of active facilitation. And the third thing he talks about here is acknowledging reality. And I don't know that this will always matter, but certainly during things like the coronavirus or when the economy's got a downturn, there's nothing wrong with the leader acknowledging that, I'm scared or this has got me worried. Sometimes people feel like they need to put on airs and show that they're uber strong. And I think there's nothing wrong, and Dr. Baker talks about it, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging, this kind of has me worried. During the height of the coronavirus, I told people I'm scared. Now I'm not going to let it stop me, but if I do stop and think about it, it does worry me. It's not so much I'm worried about the virus, I'm just worried about how other people might react to the virus. And so there's nothing wrong with kind of being a little vulnerable in these meetings. Again, trying to make a meaningful connection, being human and being vulnerable certainly goes a ways for doing that. His fourth guideline is gently make participation mandatory. involve everybody. Now, I understand that there are some of these meetings, some of these facilitations that are large. Matt Ward, who is a word of mouth referral consultant and a professional speaker on topics related to professional networking, he does a lot of these calls, and I've been on calls where he's had 50, 60 people on the call. He's very good at getting himself connected, and then he'll do breakout rooms where everybody can talk. If you don't know, Zoom allows you to break out into groups, and you can designate the sizes, and Matt will generally make the group sizes of 3 to 4 people. And he kind of plays with it. But anyhow, there's 3 to 4 people, and you're kind of forced to participate. But if you have a meeting and there's 50 people on there, there's just really no way that people can participate. So, but try and get everybody participating. Everybody should have an opportunity to speak. These are not opportunities to just sit by and do nothing. And I think it's a little easier when you're kind of in these Zoom settings for people not to participate. And you, if you're facilitating this, need to make sure everybody's kind of chiming in. Everybody needs to chime in. Guideline number 5 is introductions, making sure everybody has an opportunity to introduce themselves. Sometimes that can be a little chaotic. Zoom, people tend to move around on my screen. I need to try and make sure I've got hitting everybody. But I think with a little pre-planning, what I have learned is okay, I just need to kind of have a roster of who's on the call, and I'll work down that roster and not pay attention to who's on the screen. The other thing I will do with respect to introductions is make sure that everybody is somewhat brief. Sometimes people like to go on, hey, it's my turn to talk, I'm just going to go. No, we all have about 30 seconds. We have a number of people to get through. If there's 20 people on the call and everybody's afforded 30 seconds, that's 10 minutes of time. And if you allow people to go on for a minute and a half, it really just starts to chew up the time, and it kind of can get exhausting after a while. And I mean, that's just kind of the general feel. You're just, okay, why am I on here? What am I listening to? Dr. Baker's guideline number 6 is it alludes to making it fun. Have some fun piece of it as well. And I think there's certainly a lot of truth to it. Of course, there's truth to it. Dr. Baker is actually drawing from science and other researchers out there and putting this list together. But we're a little more dialed in when there are things that are personal in nature. If you remember a podcast I recently did talking about a study where people who shared personal things develop a better relationship than when people are just doing business. So you want to kind of make it somewhat fun, and it doesn't have to chew up the whole meeting. You can make it part of the introduction. Some of my AmSpirit chapters do this. So people introduce themselves. Okay, what was your favorite Halloween costume? Might be said during the Halloween time. Just get people to talking about something that's just other than business. Dr. Baker's guideline number 7, learn something new. Learn something new. The session needs to be about some little educational tidbit. It doesn't have to be related to the business per se, but everybody should come away with saying, okay, I learned something today. Might not be something that's applicable immediately, but you learned something new. And so you want to kind of give some meat to the meeting other than just the virtual meeting, other than just touching base. Guideline number 8, enable chat. If the platform you have allows you to have chat, Zoom allows you to have chat. This is not an infomercial for Zoom. I just use Zoom. But enable people to chat, to share information. Somebody might say something, hey, I'm looking for this. And if you know of something that can solve that, rather than disrupting the whole group, you can send them a note, or you can just send them an email. One of the things I would caution with respect to chat, I was doing a presentation on a Zoom call, and somebody was sending me chat messages. Well, I was sharing my screen, I'm talking, I'm kind of in the zone, doing what I do. I'm not looking at their chat. So certainly be conscious of who you're chatting with, and if it's something that you need some sort of immediate response on. The person was chatting with me, was telling me I had 5 minutes left. You know what? Interrupt me, because I'm not going to be opening the chat. I'm looking at my screen. I'm doing the things I need to do. But it's nice that the chat's enabled and everybody can sort of participate. And depending upon, there are settings in Zoom where you can save the chat, or the chat will automatically download to you, and then you can certainly share that with other people if there's information in there. One other word of caution is that private chats are captured as well. So if you have to be careful on this, because if person A is telling person B that the facilitator is a bozo, that's going to come through. They're going to see that. So you need to be careful with what you chat. Dr. Baker's ninth point is really about practice and routine. I think we get better. I get better with respect to Zoom. I'm always learning things. I'm seeing what other people are doing. I certainly have learned a lot from Matt Ward and the types of things that he does, and there are other people who use Zoom meetings or similar meetings, and how they're sharing, how they're recording, how they're interviews. But it's just you can't just get on there and be good at it. It's kind of like podcasting. I share the stories of when I first started podcasting. It literally took me 8 hours to record my first episode. I was a horrible critic of myself. I just kept starting over, didn't realize I could cut, and I didn't have to do it all in one take. And you just get better at it. And when I do podcasts now, I just sit, hit record, and go. And I'll do some editing along the ways. But it's the same thing with doing your virtual meetings. You just get better at it. So have them routinely. Have people be used to them, and you'll get better at it. And then his 10th guideline is experiment. Try things. You're going to fail. That's okay. It's not a big deal. But you need to try, and when you try, then you figure something out. You'll find out, hey, that worked really well, or that didn't work at all. Some people will have suggestions for you, but you just need to kind of experiment with things. So those are 10 ideas, 10 guidelines by Dr. Wayne Baker for making your virtual meetings more connected in a meaningful way. Finally, to wrap up, and I would certainly be remiss if I didn't remember to say this, but we're looking to add quality people to our stable of franchisees. This is a unique franchise opportunity in that it's geared for aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals to add on to what they are already doing. Again, as I've said in the past, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, our franchisees operate the AmSpirit Business Connections program. The rest of their week, they're accountants, they're attorneys, financial advisors, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. If you have an interest, or you know somebody who might have an interest in talking about this, please have them email me, or you email me, using the email I provide in the show notes or the one that we'll provide at the end of the podcast.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.